Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel Nate's Pink Bookshelf. My name is Nate Denise for those of you who are new to the channel or who just happen to stumble across this video. And as the title says, this is going to be my August 2020 wrap-up. And I haven't done an actual wrap-up this year in a long time. I think the one I previously posted was from February, just because I already had that one edited and everything, so I just wanted to post it. But I don't think I've done one in a while. But I did want to do my August wrap up just because I really did read a lot of great books for the month of August. I read a total of 23 books in August, and it was a great reading month for me. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but I did sadly have one DNF, which it has to go, and that's going to be The King's Mercy by Lori Benton. This is a Christian historical fiction set in North Carolina. It follows a rebel Scotsman named Alex McKinnon, and it sounded really good, but it just did not pique my interest. I did get about 6 pages or so. I actually got more than 6 pages, and I got like 20-some odd pages in, because I kept skipping through the book to see if I would like it, and it just was not piquing my interest, so I completely DNF'd, and I will be unhauling this book. It is an ARC that I received last year. This book came out June 4th, 2019. I received this ARC, and it did not click with me whatsoever. I will say the cover on this is gorgeous, though. Gorgeous cover, but this just was not for me, so I completely will be DNFing this book and unhauling it. If I do feel an interest in reading it, I'll just listen to the audiobook if I can find it, or I'll just get the ebook copy, but I don't want to own this at all. It's just not my cup of tea, so I'm unhauling this. The next book that I read was this. I only read 31 days of it. It is an devotional. It's Unseen by Priscilla Shirer. I read this for my Christian channel. If you guys don't know, I do have a Christian channel called Daughter of Increase. You can click the I to go over there, where I talk about Christian books and Bible studies and things like this. And this was a part of my TBR prompt, not my TBR bingo, I think it was, that I did for that channel. And this was the prompt of reading a book with deckled edges, and this was the only book that had deckled edges, so I did read 31 days of this. I'm really not going to rate this because this is a devotional geared towards middle grade and younger kids, but if I had to, I would say a 4 stars. So we have this. Okay, so now on to the book. So the first book that I read for the month was called Habba by Tosca Lee. This is biblical fiction, but you could also classify it as historical fiction. It's basically telling the story of Adam and Eve through the eyes of Eve, and this was fantastic. I did listen to the audiobook while reading this. The audiobook was a little bit abridged, so I found that it was skipping pages and paragraphs and changing up some of the words, but I did give this book a 5 star. I thoroughly enjoyed this from the start to the finish. It was epic. It was lyrical. Tosca Lee has such a lyrical writing style that I just thoroughly enjoy. It's very descriptive. It pulls you into the story and into the setting, so I highly would recommend checking out her books. She does write biblical fiction, which is a subgenre of historical fiction, and she also writes suspense novels. I have read most of her sort of biblical fiction books. I've read this and another one, which you'll see shortly, but this was a 5 star read for me. Thoroughly enjoyed this book. Following that, I read Scythe by Neil Schusterman. This was a part of the Simply We Read book club from Kaylani Simply Me. I think that's her channel. Just click the I to go to her channel. And this was really good. I gave this a 4.75 star rating because I felt like there was something slightly missing, but I loved Citra. I love Rowan. I love Faraday. I think that Goddard got exactly what he deserved. I cried for baby Volta. I cried for him. He's not, I mean, he's technically grown, but I still cried for him because of what happened. If you read the story, you know. That ending, we're gonna have to talk about it. It was funny, it was sad, and it was nasty all at the same time. And I'm combining like probably like 2 or 3 chapters, because there was a scene when Citra punched Roman in the face, and I was here for it, but then she also licked the blood off her hand. I didn't like that part. That was like nasty, but I am excited to continue on with this trilogy. I will be picking up the 2nd and 3rd book because this was phenomenal. It is sci-fi, dystopian, and it just the Scythes. I need to know what's up with the Thunderhead, because I feel like the Thunderhead, there's something with the Thunderhead because it can speak to Citra, so I need to really know and understand what it is. I loved what was her name, Curie? I think it's Curie and Faraday. We loved them. I shipped them. I did not care for the romance between Citra and Rowan. I felt like it was forced, but I did love their relationship bond as far as like friendship goes. That was epic, but this was really, really good, so I did give this a 4.75 star rating. Next, I read Stay With Me by Becky Wade. This was technically a reread, and I read this one more critically this time around. The first time I gave it 4 stars. The second time I am going with a 3.5 star rating because there were some things that I found problematic, and because this is considered a Christian contemporary romance, but there is this mystery plot thrown in there that I didn't fully understand. So because they threw that plot in there on top of the contemporary romance, I didn't care for. But I did love Genevieve and Sam, their relationship, their bonding, their growth, and the way that they developed within the romance was perfection. But that mystery thriller aspect with the murder, I didn't care for at all. So I did give this, upon second reread, a 3.5 star rating. But this is a Christian contemporary romance. I then read a classic, and it was Sense and Sensibility by Jane Austen, but this one is an edition written by Karen Swallow Prior. It comes with a guide and a reflective question kind of thing. This is more so written with a Christian perspective in mind, so it's basically reading through classics with a Christian perspective in mind. And I did give this a 3.75. Sorry, I had to look at my rating. Gave it a 3.75. This is not my first time reading Sense and Sensibility. I love Marianne. I love what's her name? Eleanor and Lucy. I think the 3 sisters are silly. The reason why I'm not giving it a full 4 stars because I honestly was not fully invested in reading it this time around, so I will be reading it down the line. But I love this edition. This edition is gorgeous. It's gray cloth with this beautiful foiling on it. Really love this, and this author does have other editions of classics. She has Sense and Sensibility out. She has a Heart of Darkness out. She will be coming out with what is it, Jane Eyre, Frankenstein, and The Scarlet Letter, which I hope to also get those other 3 in. But I do own this one as well as The Heart of Darkness, and I'm glad I have them, and they're just phenomenal. So yeah, I did read this for Tom Topple as well, so that was great. The next one I read was considered a Christian suspense, and that is going to be Storm Rising by Ronnie Kindig, excuse me, and this is the first book in the Book of Wars. It's what's called the Book of the Wars. Yeah, the Book of the Wars. And this is going to be a trilogy, which I am so excited. I will be picking up the second book to read because this first book was amazing. I gave this a 4-star rating because I just felt like it was a Christian Captain America, and it was action-packed. I love that this took place worldwide. It wasn't just set in the States, but you had it taking place in Istanbul. You had it taking place in I can't think of it. The Sea of Marmara, I think that's what you call it. I think it took place, yeah, in Greece, and it took place in different locations. The Mediterranean Sea. Where else did it take place? Just different parts of the world, and I thoroughly enjoyed it. I love the main character. I think his name is Life. The name is on the screen because I can never pronounce it, but it follows him, who he used to be a Navy SEAL, a former Navy SEAL, and something happened, I believe, in a previous series that she wrote, the author wrote, where he obtained these powers. But in him getting these powers, he basically lost the last 6 months, or the previous 6 months of his life, so he can't remember what happened. And these powers allow him to heal quickly. He can remember things a lot quicker than most people, and it's just a bunch of stuff into that. And he's very super strong and things like that, and it just reminds me of Captain America. There's also a female character, and his female protagonist's name is Iskra, but they call her Viroka, and she is after the Book of Wars for her client and her boss, whereas Leaf and his team is now also after the Book of Wars. And the Book of Wars is basically this book that can predict future wars to come, and it's based off of the Book of Revelation in the Bible. And this was just amazing to me. I thoroughly enjoyed it. The only reason why I couldn't give it 5 stars is because I felt like it did drag in certain parts of the story, but overall I will be finishing this trilogy. And the reason why I'm even more excited is because most of the times when you're reading Christian fiction books, whether it's contemporary or suspense or things like that, the series or trilogy does not follow the same characters. It's normally side characters from the first book or the second book. However, with this series, this trilogy, the book follows the same characters, so I'm super excited for that. So I will be continuing on to figure out what's going on with Leaf and Iskra, or Viroka as they call her, and just to understand their romance a lot more, because there were some things that went down in book 1 that I need to continue on with book 2. So we have this, and I gave it a 4-star. Following that, I read Ismene, which you can see the cover here, by Tascali. This is a prequel novella to her The Legend of Sheba. It's a standalone, but she has this prequel, so I read the prequel. I gave it a 4 stars. It was pretty short, pretty sweet, and it was basically giving you information about the Queen of Sheba's mother up until her birth. So yeah, I read that and gave it 4 stars. It was quick, simple, and easy. Following that, I actually read the novel, which is the Legend of Sheba, Rise of a Queen by Tascali. Sorry. I gave this book a 4-star rating. I wanted to give this a 5, but what got me was the first third of the book I thoroughly enjoyed. Like, it was amazing. The second third, there was a sort of journey portion of the queen traveling to another place, and it's always the journeys that kind of pull me out of the story, more so because she is a female character and because she is a queen, and this is set during the biblical time, so of course they weren't really doing much as women back in those times, so it was pretty much like lackluster for me, pretty much. There was one battle scene that I really did enjoy, and then the last third of the book was overly poetic because it includes King Solomon, who if you don't know, he is the son of King David from the Bible, and he also wrote a lot of poetry, so he's very poetic and overly lyrical for me, so that's why I did give it a 4-star. But I thoroughly did enjoy this book. It is Christian biblical fiction, but more so Christian historical fiction for those who don't know about the genre. But yeah, I read it, I enjoyed it, and I'm glad to have owned it. And this is signed. This, as well as the other book I have, are signed by the authors. So this one is signed, as well as the book Habba that I got from her is signed as well. So yeah. Following that, I read another biblical fiction or Christian historical fiction, and this was On This Foundation by Lynn Austin. I have read the entire trilogy. This is called The Restoration Chronicles. There's 3 books in the series. The first one is Return to Me, the second one is Keepers of the Covenant, and this one is On This Foundation. This one follows the prophet Nehemiah. The first one, Return to Me, follows the prophet Zechariah, and the second one, which is Keepers of the Covenant, follows the prophet Ezra. I gave this book a 4.5. Yeah, 4.5 star rating. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I loved all of the characters. There was not one character in here that I like truly despised, and I love the just great nuggets of gold that were shared in this book, and I love the covers. All of the covers have this like gorgeous sunset type of feel, and they're just all really beautiful. If you're looking for historical fiction that is more Christian based, I definitely would say check out The Restoration Chronicles from Lynn Austin. It is a phenomenal trilogy. All right, now we get into all the fantasy that I read, because I read a lot of fantasy, and obviously Tome Topple had happened, so I did partake in Tome Topple. So outside of that classic, I think the rest of these were tomes that I read, okay? So the first one is going to be The Rage of Dragon by Evan Winters. I read this for the Busy Bee Book Club, and this, what did I give this? I can't remember. They gave this a 4.5 star rating. Yeah, 4.5 star rating. I enjoyed this book. This book started off really good for me. It started off really strong, but I felt like it just was repetitive as far as like the training portions of the book. It follows a young guy named Tao, and he is basically being trained to join the army. He doesn't really want to join the army. He pretty much just wants to fall in love and live a regular normal life, but in his society they can't do that. They also have a caste system of like nobles and lower caste and all this other stuff. There's a whole lot of drama in this book, and this was pretty okay. Like I said, I was looking at it 4 stars, but we got to them last few chapters and the action picked up for me, and I was just like here for it. And the last line of this book just sold me for a 4.5 star rating. Like, sold me. So I am excited to read the sequel when it comes out in November, if I'm not mistaken. The sequel comes out in November, but this was really good. It is African inspired fantasy, and this has dragons. I wanted a lot more of the dragons in this story. You did get to see the dragons, but they weren't as prominent as I would have thought they would have been, especially with it being Rage of Dragons. But Rage of Dragons, this is actually like mentioned in the book. And I love when authors take their book titles and includes them in their story so that you can understand the title of their book. That's just something I love when authors do. But yeah, I was really sold on this after like the last 5 or so chapters. I was like, but that last line, I'm interested to see what happens now with Tao as the champion for the queen. I want more. And you guys can see I did tab up this book, so I enjoyed this a lot. Following that, I did a reread, and I love the series so much. There are only 3 books out right now, but it is going to be a 5-book series, and it's The Ruin of Kings by Jen Lyons. I am going to have a review for all 3 of the books coming really soon, but this is an epic fantasy. It's adult epic fantasy, and it is categorized as young adult on Goodreads, but I would not say this is young adult whatsoever. This is definitely adult, and this might be a little bit of a polarizing story for most because it is so complex in how she wrote it. It's not a linear story at all. There are multiple POVs. There are thousands of characters. There's a lot of reincarnation and body swapping, which can get confusing, and you don't know who's who and what's what, and it's just so much drama. This is steeped in politics and family drama, so I loved it. The first time I read this book, when I got an ARC, I gave it a 5 star. Upon second reread, I did give it a 4.5, or was it 4.75? I don't remember exactly, it'll be on the screen what I gave it, but I did take off half star the second time around just because I found some stuff logically just didn't make sense after reading it. But now that I read the other two books, logically it makes sense, but when I originally read this the second time, it didn't make sense, if that makes sense. So it's technically a 5-star, but like I said, I'm gonna go with a 4.7, 4.5. We still debating on that, but this follows Kieran, and Kieran grew up in the slums with his father, or so he thought it was his father, and upon his 16th birthday, he finds out that all of the stories that his father and his sort of foster mother taught him were basically true, but they were true and about him, and he is a long-lost prince who was basically stolen, and there's a whole lot of drama. There are demons, there are dragons, and the fact that there are real dragons that actually converse and interact with the characters, I'm here for. There's a lot of talk about the gods and goddesses and the religions, and just epic. This series does include LGBTQ plus rep. Wraith and Karen, I'm here for it, but there's also just, it's just so good. I'm gonna wait till my review to talk about this because I absolutely love this series so much. So we have the Ruined Kings. I did read this with Tom Topple, and like I said, I thoroughly enjoyed it. I would highly recommend it. This does have footnotes, so if you're not a fan of footnotes, I would not tell you to read this book because it does include footnotes, and you have to read the footnotes to thoroughly understand things that happen in the story. So yeah. Following that, I read The Will of Ascension by Brandon Sanderson. This is the second book in the first Mistborn Era 1. I think that's what you call it, Mistborn. It's in the Mistborn trilogy, Era 1, the second book, and I gave this book a 5-star. This was, it was epic. I have no words for what happened at the end of this book with Ellen and Ben and the crew, and it broke my heart because there were some characters that died that I just wasn't expecting them to die. I wasn't expecting it, but I'm currently reading the third book, so it's so good. But yeah, I love this book so much. Like, out of the entire series, the trilogy, I think this is going to be like the only one that has a 5-star. Depending on how the third one goes, it might be a 4.5 right now. We're looking at a 4.5, but this second one definitely is a 5-star. This was everything I needed. Action, drama, romance. The romance just blew my mind. Just blew my mind. Brandon Sanderson is phenomenal. My number one favorite book from Brandon Sanderson will forever be Warbreaker. That was the first Brandon Sanderson book I read from him. I know most people recommend that you start off with Elantris. I did not read Elantris first. I read Warbreaker first, and then I read Elantris. And Warbreaker is my number one favorite book, but this right here might be my number 2 because so good. It was so good. So 5-star read. Love this. Epic fantasy. It's a continuation of what happened in the Final Empire. However, my book is called Mistborn. I do have a mass market paperback copy of it. So my first book is called Mistborn, but the first book is technically called The Final Empire. However that makes sense. But yeah, 5-star read all the way. Following that, I reread a book for Tone Topple because that was a pick of rereading or finishing a book that you started in a previous round of Tone Topple, and that is going to be 12 Kings and Sherukh. 12 Kings and Sherukh by Bradley V. Pulu, and this is the first book in the, I can never say the series right, Song of the Shattered Sands, and holy cow, I gave this a 4.5-star rating. This was amazing. The only reason why I couldn't give it a 5 stars is because I felt like some parts were just unnecessary or just elongated, but it's information you did need. But for me, I just didn't really enjoy reading it. This is a tome, obviously, but I absolutely adore Cheta so much. What is the boy's name? There is her friend. I can't remember his name at the time right now, which is Emery. There we go. So Cheta and Emery. So Cheta and Emery live in this world where there are 12 kings that rule their land. They rule Sherukh. And the 12 kings all have these abilities that were given to them from the gods or something like that. And I will say the magic system in this is quite interesting. I'm still trying to get a handle on the magic system. I love all of the 12 kings. Each king has like a specific ability. They can either like hear really well, or they can they rule over the Asirim, which are a type of creature, or they're like the master of blades, things like that. The first time I read this book, I got to like chapter 30 something, and it was good. But upon second reread, finishing this book, I absolutely adored it. I definitely will be continuing on with the series. It is a very long series. I know for a fact it's a long series with like a novella type series as well that goes with it. But I do own them on ebook. However, I do want physical books because It's phenomenal. Cheta is just kick butt. She's smart, she's brilliant, she's very quick on her feet, and I love how she handles herself when it comes to battles. There are a lot of things that take place, a lot of things, a lot of drama, family drama in a sense, and it's a lot. It's a lot, but I absolutely adored it. Gave it a 4.5-star rating. So yeah. Following that, I did read another Christian fiction, but this one was a Christian fantasy, and it's called Prophet by R.J. Larson. This is YA Christian fantasy, and I thoroughly enjoyed this. I gave this a 4-star rating. This was very interesting. It has some parallels to the Old Testament kings. If you guys have read the Bible, a lot of the kings in the Old Testament were really wicked, evil men, and this story kind of parallels that. It does not have any scripture included, but you do get to see some of that biblical wisdom used in this book, and I was thoroughly shocked. There are two more books in the series called Judge and King. I will be picking those up because this was really, really good. The series is called the Infinite Trilogy, and this follows a young girl named Ella of Parnay, right? Yeah, Ella Roa of Parnay, and at the age of 17, she is picked by the Infinite to be a prophet. She agrees immediately, and she goes on a journey to a different land to basically tell these people to get their lives together, and upon doing that, she comes across these creatures. She comes across other characters. One of the other characters' name is Kine, I think that's how you say it. And they sort of build a romance, but she knows she can't be with anybody because she knows that she has to devote her entire life in being to the infinite. And it's so good, and it's so action-packed and drama-filled, and I loved it. So I gave it 4 stars. I then again read another Christian book, and it's going to be a Christian sci fantasy is what I'm calling it because it is so good. This is book 7 of the Left Behind series. It's called The Indwelling by Tim LaHaye and Jerry B. Jenkins, and this does have a movie out. I have not seen the movie, but it is a 13-book series with a 3-book prequel trilogy, and I gave this book a 4-star only because there were things I was expecting to happen, but it really pretty much dragged on for me with what I wanted, and what I really wanted to happen didn't happen till like the last chapter. So it was good. It was really sad because a lot of the characters were like dying and stuff like that, and I can't really explain much about it because, like I said, this is book 7 in the Left Behind series. But the Left Behind series is basically a book about the rapture in the 7-year tribulation, basically the book of Revelation in a Christian sci fantasy series, and the devil reincarnate and all that, and this was good. But I was expecting a lot more, and it's not really gonna, what I really want is not gonna take place until book 8, which I'm so excited to read book 8 for this month of September. So yes, but I did give this 4 stars. All right, and the last 2 books that I read for the month, right? No, not the last 2 books. I'm lying. These are not the last 2 books, but the last 2 physical ones that I read for the month go together because they're books 2 and 3 of the Ruin of Kings, or the Chorus of Dragons series, excuse me. So book 2 is the name of all things from the Chorus of Dragons series. Book 1 was the Ruin of Kings. This one picks up with that, but it is following another main character named Janelle and her sort of best friend slash keeper in a sense named Brother Quan. And you still get Karen in here, you still get Wraith, you still get all the other characters from the first book in here, but you're seeing it from a different perspective of what's happening on the other side of the world while the things from the Ruin of Kings was happening. So they're kind of pretty much happening during the same timeline. You're just seeing them in different points of views, if that makes sense. Hopefully it's still as complex, still as crazy, still as funny, still as comical, still told in a non-linear kind of storytelling way, and it does include footnotes. I gave this one 4 stars. I wasn't as invested only because this did not follow the main characters that I loved from book 1. It did follow Janelle, which you do meet Janelle in book 1, and I enjoyed her as a character. I also enjoyed Rello Sabaro, who you get to see his side of things as well in this book, but I really wasn't invested in other characters such as Nina or Dorna or things like that. They weren't just like my favorite characters at all. I love the main characters from the first book, but I just wasn't caring too much for this, so that's why I gave it 4 stars, but it was still just as good. And then following reading this, I also read the 3rd book, and this book came out on the 25th of August, and it is The Memory of Souls, which I gave this book 5 stars. 5 stars because that ending tore me to pieces. The romance was everything I needed. Again, this series does include LGBTQ plus rep in it, so you are getting to see a lot of just romance, just a lot of romances, some straight romances, some gay romances, some lesbian romances, just there's even this transgender character, which I don't, were they in this book? I think I don't know if the transgender character was in this book or the other book, but you also get this talk about like fluidity with sexuality, and it was, Jen has just she's created such a phenomenal series, and I'm excited for books 4 and 5 to release. Book 4 does have a title. I can't remember the title. It was on the screen for book 4, but I am excited for that to come out. And she has been releasing these books like every 6 months or so. So I'm excited. They're from Tor Publishing, and I did receive all 3 of these books from Tor for a review, which all my reviews will be linked down below for this series, because I am like freaking adoring the mess out of this series. It is phenomenal. We love Kieran. We ship him with Teraith. I do love Janelle, but if I had to pick between him being with Teraith or Janelle, I would say Teraith, only because I've grown to really love Teraith from book 1. But again, there is a lot of soul swapping, body swapping, reincarnations, and drama, and just so much, and it's so good. Again, footnotes, so if you're not a fan of footnotes, don't read it. But for me, this definitely got a 5-star. The first book got a 5-star the first time I read it, but then upon second reread, I gave it a 4.75. The second book got a 4-star, and this one definitely got a 5 stars. So epic. I'm excited. So let's move on now to the ebooks that I read. So the first ebook, and I'm actually gonna have to look in my reading journal for that. So the first one I read was Pet by this author. I cannot pronounce this author for the life of me. Cannot pronounce it, but I did give it a 4.5-star rating. This was, I have no words for how dumbfounded I felt reading this. This was powerful in every manner. Like, you're basically discussing not demons, but you're discussing angels and what evil is, and just I have no words to still say what I feel about this book. Just know it was really good, and I definitely will be picking up a physical copy of it because of how amazing it was. Reading the ebook was a little confusing at times, and I tried to get the audiobook out from the library, but it's been out for like weeks from other people, and it would have took at least 6 weeks for me to get the audiobook, so I wasn't gonna wait for that. So I did read the ebook. I did push through, which is why I couldn't give it a full 5, because I was struggling with the ebook. So I will pick up a physical copy of this book to read, but it was phenomenal on what she touched on and the struggle that Black people have. The main character, I don't want to say the main character was mute, because she could speak, but she more so did sign language. She only really conversed with her mother with words. And it was really good. I have no words to describe how I felt. So yeah, I'm still trying to get my feelings together on this book, but it was really good. You have to read it to fully understand what I'm trying to say. So I would highly recommend you read Pet. Pet was really good, really good. Okay, then I read a few graphic novels. So I read Sass and Sorcery, which is volume 1 of the Rat Queens, and I gave it 4 stars. I actually enjoyed this. I thought it was really funny and quirky. I love the art style. I love the characters, so I'm definitely invested in this and will continue on reading it. It was great. Then I read volume 1 of Tokyo Ghoul, which I have seen Tokyo Ghoul, all of the anime. Love it so much, but I definitely wanted to read it, especially since I purchased volume 14 from my local library, which is kind of stupid that I bought volume 14 and not the rest. But yeah, so I decided to just read through it up until volume 14, which I physically own a copy of. Volume 1 was really good, just as great as the anime, and I felt like I was rewatching the anime, but in book form, so I gave it a 5-star rating. I love it so much. It basically follows Kaneki, who gets attacked by a ghoul and becomes a half human, half ghoul, and he has to learn to survive and live as a hybrid of sorts. And he ends up working at this cafe. I can't remember the name of the cafe, but yeah, he learns from the cafe owner how to survive as a ghoul, pretty much. And the only thing he really can muster up is coffee. So like, he has to ground coffee beans up and put it on like toast and stuff like that and drink coffee, because that's pretty much the only thing that ghouls can handle. Everything else they need to eat is pretty much the meat of a human, of a corpse, and things like that. And Kaneki has to deal with that and learn to maneuver his new life. So we have that. Oh, and his best friend as well, who doesn't realize that he is partial ghoul. But I love his best friend because I know how it turns out with his best friend in the end. So we have that. Then I read Anonymous Noise volume 1 by this author here, and I gave it a 3.5-star rating. I liked where the romance was going, but I felt like there was too much going on at the same time, which kind of confused me just a little bit. So I gave it a 3.5-star rating. Basically, this girl has this best friend who literally lives like her next door neighbor is her best friend, and they grew up together, and then at some point in time he moves away, and they used to sing a lot, and when he moved away, she couldn't really speak to him, so she stopped singing. She literally would walk around with a mask on her face and she would not sing. Then she meets another kid, another guy, when she gets older, and this kid helps her get back into singing. And it's just that story of her old love with the guy she met that she's technically crushing. It's confusing, so yeah, I'm gonna continue on, but it was just a lot for me. It was a lot, so I'm gonna continue on to see how I feel about it, because I do want to see where the romance goes. But I gave that a 3.5 star rating. And then finally, I read How to Ride. I can never say it right, but I have watched the anime. The cover is here. I have watched the anime and I love the anime so much. But I gave it 5 stars because it was just as good as the anime. And it basically follows this young girl who falls in love with this guy that she met, I don't know, in middle school or something like that. She met this guy in school. I don't remember what age, but she met him, fell in love with him, but she has this dislike for boys in general. He's the only boy she's ever liked. And then there's something that takes place where she is talking to another one of her male friends, and she blurts out that she just hates all boys. Right after, mind you, the boy that she's crushing on asks her on a date. And then she goes to meet the boy. He never shows up. And then about a couple years later, they re-meet, I believe, in high school. And it goes on from there. It's kind of like a second chance romance, but the boy that she was crushing on has completely done a 360 because he was dealing with some family issues, obviously parents divorced, things like that. So obviously with those things, you do have changes in personality when you're dealing with traumatic things. And I love how the author really talks about divorce and how it can change your perspective on life and your personality and things like that. She doesn't really talk about it per se, but you can see it in the way that the character Ko has changed his personality up from the beginning to the end. So I gave it 5 stars. It was just as good as the anime, and it makes me want to rewatch the anime. So we have that. So pretty much I had a great reading month. My reading month was solid. I'm excited for September. If you haven't seen my September TBR videos, click the eye on the screen. I am partaking in 4 readathons and 6 book clubs, and that is a lot, but I'm going to do it because I'm confident in myself in doing that. And so far I am in the middle of 3 books, and I finished 1 book already, so that's a plus. And yeah, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of 4 books because I'm reading an ebook, reading 2 fantasy books, and I just started a biblical fiction book, and I've already finished a fantasy book. So yeah, that is pretty much it for this video. Let me know what you guys read for the month of August. If you guys have read any of these books, let me know your thoughts and things like that, and I will see you guys in the next video. Bye.